Hello, I'm Eric Vance. Welcome to my 15-minute talk on asking great questions. So I'm going to share my slides. And here we go. So the questions we ask and the way in which we ask them can improve our success in meetings, in collaborations, in the classroom, and in our careers as statisticians and data scientists. And the way I figure it is if we can improve our questioning by 10%, that's going to compound over the course of our career and have a really big impact on the impact that we can have. So this is going to be a quick 15-minute overview of this idea of asking great questions. So as an introductory example, why are you watching this talk? Now, this is not a great question. For one thing, it's rhetorical. You can't actually answer me, or I can't really hear you. I didn't hear anybody. You might have gotten defensive, like maybe you were like, well, why shouldn't I watch this talk? You don't know why I'm asking you the question. This is not a great question. Many opportunities for improving this. So let me get to what is a great question. And before that, there's this overall idea that the two end goals of a consultation or a collaboration are to make a deep contribution and to create strong relationships. And so we can ask questions that make deep contributions. And so if we ask questions that help in any of these four categories, if we probe domain experts to help them improve their understanding of their own research, then that can help us make a deep contribution. If we ask a question that advances the domain expert's understanding of the statistics, that will help us make a deep contribution. So will asking a question that gets information to improve our understanding of the domain problem and to improve our understanding of the statistical issues. So asking questions in these four areas are going to help us make a deep contribution, help us increase the impact that we make on a project. This other goal of the collaboration is to create a strong relationship. So if we are asking questions that help illuminate the goals that we have and the goals that we share with the domain expert, that will improve the relationship. Asking questions that create shared understanding about the underlying facts and information about the project, that's an area to ask questions. Asking questions that improve the level of trust and regard and loyalty will help strengthen the relationship. And then there are some time and attention glue type of questions that can really help, such as like, what can I clarify? How do you feel about these results? These will help improve your relationship. These are going to strengthen the relationship. So a good question is one that helps you accomplish the task of the project. So it elicits information necessary to do your job as a statistician. And so, good questions lead to deep contributions. Or a good question is one that strengthens your relationship with the domain expert. So good questions can lead to strong relationships. And here is the kicker that great questions do both. So a great question elicits information necessary to make a deep contribution, and it strengthens the relationship between you and the domain expert. So by focusing on both the task and the relationship, we can create really effective collaborations. So just kind of an analogy is that I read to my son, Max. He's more than a year and a half old. I read to him often. And why do I read to him? Well, I read to him because I'm task-oriented. I want him to learn his ABCs. I want him to be imaginative. I'm learning I'm reading to him to teach him. I'm also reading to him to create a strong relationship. And so this is reading to my son is a activity, like a great question, that does both. It helps, him win a Nobel Prize, and it helps strengthen my relationship with my son. So some examples in the an example kind of in the attitude aspect of collaborations is, hello, my intent is to be helpful. What's the best way I can help you? And here are maybe some various options. I could help you design the experiment, analyze the data, interpret the results, etc. That question is going to get good information to help you accomplish the task, and it's also going to help you strengthen the relationship. A structure type of question is to make sure that we use our time most effectively. I'd like to know, what would you like to accomplish in the next 45 minutes? Another example is, please tell me as much as you can about exactly how the data you have were collected, because how the data are collected really have an impact on the kinds of statistical analyses that we can do. So these are just some quick examples of great questions. I'll have more examples a little bit later. These three examples, they use some strategies. So what are some strategies for asking great questions? So here are three strategies. Preface questions with your intent. Follow up and follow through. So this happens like after you ask the question, or yes, it happens after you ask the question, but it's still part of a great question. And then the third strategy is to model a collaborative relationship. So ask the question in a way that is really a question. Coming in with more details. So number one, preface questions with your intent. So you want to explain why you're asking the question. This is like you go to the doctor's office and you're getting a vaccine, and the nurse, says, okay, which arm would you like? All right, I'm going to rub some alcohol. It might sting a little bit. And are you ready? And then, jabs you. She's kind of talking you through. She's telling you what she's doing. She's not just like springing the shot into your arm. You're there. You're being able to prepare for it. And that's what prefacing our intent can do. Not just ask, how are the data collected, but so it's important for me to understand, so I can help you analyze the data better. It's important for me to understand how the data were collected. So we preface questions with our intent. That's strategy number one. Strategy number two, follow up and follow through. So you ask the question and then you actively listen to and paraphrase the domain expert's response. That's the follow-up. And that kind of converts their answer into shared understanding by paraphrasing, in your own words, their response. And then following through is that you can provide further clarification. You ask like the appropriate follow-up questions, or you maybe provide some specific options, ask a more closed form question if they're kind of looking at you with blank stares. How did you collect the data? And then they're like, well, like in many different ways. And then you can maybe follow through with like another question. It's like, oh, just thinking about, how the subjects were selected. Were they randomized? Did you just pick them willy-nilly? Something like that. That's kind of an example of following through. This third strategy of modeling a collaborative relationship. So you want to phrase questions as questions, not as statements, not as rhetorical questions that don't need to be answered, but ask in a way that conveys your intent to be collaborative. So I have a collaborator, Heather Smith. We work together a lot. I kind of ask like sort of an impertinent question, just like direct, and then she is able to soften it. And then I realize, oh yeah, it's so much better. It comes across so much better it helps the relationship better if I soften a question. So ask your questions in a softer manner, model the collaborative relationship that you want to have with the domain expert. Okay, so here's an algorithm for turning good questions into great questions. The algorithm is take a good question and apply one of the strategies or multiple strategies. So here's a good question. Like, why do you want to answer this research question? It's a good question because it will help give you more context about the domain problem. It'll help you do your statistics better. So let's just preface our intent. Let's tell them that that's the case, like that's why we're asking the question. So a great question would be something like, understanding your motivations and your reasons for researching this area helps me get excited, and it helps my brain think better. So I'm curious, like, why do you want to answer this research question? Same question, why do you want to answer this research question? So you can do a follow-up. So you ask, and you can ask it maybe in a different way. Why do you want to answer this research question? They provide their response, and then I paraphrase. So I say, so please check my understanding. So you're interested in X because that will enable you to do Y, which is important for Z reason. And then I'm either going to get like an excited, like, exactly. I'm like, sweet, that was a great question. Or they might give me like, I can read their body language, and then I can follow up and say, so what am I missing? So that would be a great question. And then using strategy 3, asking in a collaborative way, this would be, so I can see how this is an exciting line of research. Like, this is really exciting for me for this authentic reason. So I'm curious, why do you want to answer this question? And that can really help. I find that kind of question helps get you insight into the domain expert and can strengthen the relationship, as well as give you information that you need to do the good task well. Okay, so things to do at home. Before your next collaboration, write down 1 or 2 questions that you often ask and turn it into a great question. So preface with your intent, or ask it in a more collaborative way, or give them some options, some follow-up options. Then practice. So recruit a friend, practice these words, and then do it, and then reflect on how that went. Did it go well? What didn't go well? Do you think that had an impact on your collaboration? And then let me know. Like, I'd really like to know. There's the Q&A, or there's a comment, there's chats. So go ahead, let me know in the chats. Asking great questions is part of our Asker framework for collaboration. So Asker has 5 components. One of those is communication. We communicate to create shared understanding. And there are 3 aspects of communication that we talk about in the Asker framework, which is asking great questions, listening, paraphrasing, summarizing, and then explaining statistics. And it's the effective communication is how we make deep contributions and create strong relationships. So this is the point in the talk. If I had more time, I would ask you, like, how do you think asking great questions would impact your practice of statistics? Instead, I'm just going to tell you my answer, which is that focusing on the questions improves the way that I do my job, like in the task, and it also strengthens the relationship. It's kind of the definition of a great question. But that's going to lead me to be a better statistician. And I think individual impact can lead to greater collective impact, because when statisticians gain a reputation for being helpful and collaborative, there's going to be more demand for and supply of collaborative statisticians. And I really like to educate and train collaborative statisticians. So the more that we get this reputation for being collaborative, the more students I'm going to get to train, and the better reputation we're all going to have. So a concluding example is that, So I'm asking you to help me turn this talk into a more useful resource for the community, for the consulting and collaboration community, for the statistical education community. So I'd appreciate your feedback. So what did you find useful in this idea of asking great questions? What were you hoping to hear but didn't hear? So what was missing? And what can I clarify about this concept? I only had 15 minutes, so I can't talk about everything that I wanted to talk about. If you put in a question or a response in the chat, please do. I will follow up and follow through, and maybe we'll have a frequently asked questions section of this Asking Great Questions paper that will eventually come out. Here's a list of some resources. So the Asker framework, Heather Smith and I wrote. We got the best paper award in the Journal of Statistics Education last year. And there's a proceedings paper about goals of collaborations. And then Heather Smith and I are going to be teaching a workshop on effective collaboration at the Conference on Statistical Practice. So we're going to go into more detail, you'll have more practice, and you'll see how asking direct questions fits in with all of the other things that we have to improve collaborations. Finally, there's a slide, a resource here, osf.io/xntce, with lots of other resources. So thank you for attending. Thank you for your attention. And let me know what you found useful, what you thought was missing, what can I clarify? What questions do you have about asking great questions?